Yes, now you're on air.
Yeah, now.
Hi guys, I'm happy to see you again, and I'm here with Gabriel and Doug for our September's Ask Me Anything, and we will discuss new features, bug fixes, and answering some questions.
Right. uh, I think it's you're up now.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's up to
So yeah, I think we'll start talking about the release, the 2.0 release, and things were involved on the release, and then we can break out to the questions. A few things that we wanted to highlight. One, yes, because it's a major release, we have breaking chains. So a few things is there is a whole refactor of the federation engine. We got the learnings from the beta version. We dove deeper into the matrix protocol to get more stuff that was not we're not doing it exactly the same way as they were doing. And we brought them all to a whole refactoring of how the federation is done. This there's some questions later on. This is not yet still the final version. It's a release candidate now, and the idea is that we will actually move that into the final version on the 3.0, where we incorporate the federation engine. That right now it's just something that runs in parallel of the main engine that distributes the messages, and we incorporate all this engine into the main engine of streams. So almost like things like the chain of IDs and events that we have that we built for Federation will be part of the whole platform. We're also removing the support for older versions of MongoDB. So we're dropping the support for MongoDB 3.2, and we will now already deprecate MongoDB 3.4. The idea is that we should at least keep with the same versions that Mongo themselves support. So we'll try to keep the support to the official versions of MongoDB that they are supporting. The main goal behind that is there's a few features on the new versions, the new latest releases that we want to make use of, like to get more performance, some different kinds of queries and stuff, and that we only can use it if we start dropping some old code or refactoring code to use those features, and so some of those old versions of MongoDB will stop working. Not immediately, but at least we are not supporting them anymore. So there's a few endpoints that we are dropping on the API. I think you guys should check it out. There's about one for the custom emojis, some API info. There's some publications, some rooms descriptions by role, users in role. So I think those are mainly endpoints that were not being used, or the code also it was not optimized, and we decided there were better ways to do the same kind of calls. So we have deprecated them a while ago. People were receiving already a message whenever they were calling those APIs, and now we finally dropped those APIs. Also, we dropped the GraphQL interface because it was for quite some time a task that we were doing. We were thinking about rewriting most of the web clients and mobile clients using GraphQL, but I think GraphQL is too much of a generic interface that for us to get a proper performance improvements that we want, we need to do something a lot more specific. We still plan to support GraphQL interface and rebuild it, get that code and refactoring into new code, but then mainly for people to extract data to Rocket.Chat and not exactly specifically for the clients, the web clients and mobile clients to use as a way of streaming data. I think in the future, we want to have this as a way for other services to interconnect with Rocket.Chat and receive data, but it won't be the main way. We're also dropping the old live chat client. We have been shipping a new version of the live chat client built in Preact, which is a flavor, a slimmed down version of React. So it has a lot more functionality. It's a lot lighter. There's a whole different building process. It's like a new, fresh design. I don't know. It's miles um, uh, away in the future from our previous implementation. The previous implementation was a meter app that was kind of like built and then bundle in, and you have those two meter apps bundled together. We found out that building a very very slim version just using Preact that is like a fraction of what the other one used to have in size. It turns to be a lot of benefits, and you had a lot more control about how it works. Interesting fact: it shares the API with our new mobile applications, the connection API. So we're starting to see a good sharing source code between clients, mobile clients, and web clients. And I think this was our first attempt to get the React Native apps for mobile starting to share the same APIs as our live chat clients. And we managed to get this work, and I think it's a big accomplishment. And I think the goal is for all our clients to be sharing the same SDK uh, on how to connect to Rocket.Chat servers. And this will save us a lot of time in development, and also keep all the platforms more in sync in terms of features and in terms of capabilities and so on. We also, I think there was one smaller change. We replaced our TAP 8 I19N package for one that we can now support 3-digit locales. Um, I think it's a small change, but it's still releasing as a breaking change because it might change some if people have customized. But if you have not customized your strings and translations, that should not affect you. We also have some interesting cool features. I think, yeah. So this 2.0 release was not just dropping stuff. We added some stuff as well. So we have some new options for SAML authentication for individual organization needs. I think that was a contribution from Delta Chaos. Thank you. We also did some changes, like making Rocket.Chat assume that it's behind a proxy by default. That's actually adding a header on the HTTP forward count 1. I think there's more details on the pull request, but we figured that actually most times Rocket.Chat is behind a proxy because Rocket.Chat doesn't even do the SSL termination. So the default way or the proper way of deploying Rocket.Chat is usually having a load balancer or proxy in front that can do the SSL termination. So we're now putting this as the default. We finally merged a big LDAP pull request that added, I think, Risky closed a lot of the issues about user groups and roles and channel synchronizations to an LDAP directory. I think this is a repetition of LDAP directory. But I think it was a long needed and a very well developed pull request. We are so happy that we finally have merged, and yeah, just sorry that it took it so long, but it was something that we really cared about and we wanted to get it right. So, but I'm really happy with the results. And we'll be more happy when we release the 2.0 and people can actually get their hands on and start using it and helping us improve it even further. Also, something that we changed, just so you guys can see this gradual migration to React. We changed our setup wizard and some of the page not found templates and some other plates into React components. So rather than having them built all on Meteor, we're starting to move those things out of the Meteor app into React apps. And we're going to keep doing this. I think on the 3.0, we will see the admin interface being removed from the main bundle, and then loaded by uh, by demand on the as being as a React app. I think this, yeah, it's the beginning of the process. It's going to make the bundle much lighter. It's going to allow us to use new and better technology to build our UI, and I think it's be very beneficial. And gradually, we start moving component by component into a React uh, version. We also now support multiple push gateways. This one got me a bit of a surprise. Do you know what was the reasoning behind it? I don't know. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
put it out there. I wasn't aware exactly about the needs. We added some another pull request from Deutsche Bank guys about the granular permissions. I think that was a very good idea that the guys had about you could give permission for changing settings, different settings for different users. And this is the typical thing from a large organization where you're going to have more admins, but maybe some admins can just organize the user authentication and some other stuff and have other users and can configure other parts of the system. So we merged this PR for having these granular permissions for settings. Is the first version? I think was a good step. We probably will like the community give us feedback so we can improve that even further in the future. Maybe using some wildcards and being able to give a whole section, or I don't know, having more flexible way to define what each person has access to. But the first version is out there for you guys to test, and thanks for the contributions from Deutsche Bank. And there was also another integration from DeepL translation services into Rocket.Chat. I think until now we were supporting mainly just Google Translate, but the API was built in a generic way that more people could actually use or point to different services. And I think we got this contribution from Vicky Ackerman, I don't know, Vic Jockerman, maybe, that added another service. So I would even encourage the community, if you want to add more services and into this built in a generic way, please help us add more translation services. And also, the whole idea is we will eventually migrate those kind of integrations into apps. So once all those APIs are abstracted in a way that is mainly just a configuration point and a layer of abstraction that does do the translations of the objects from one side to the other, you should just be able to create apps for different translation services and just put on the App Store and make it easy for everybody to use without having to ship the code with Rocket.Chat all the time. I also noted down a few bug fixes. There was some logic on how we mark rooms as red that were fixed. Some way of cleaning the sessions when the window is closed. I think this is more even a security issue. Request that even if you don't log out to forget a few things from the session. The search message was wrongly grouping some messages in when they had threads, or they belonged to threads or belonged to discussions. So that was also fixed. There was an annoying user interface bug. We added the rate limit on incoming integrations from webhooks. It wasn't working properly. We also worked some compatibility with Internet Explorer. We still have users and companies that use Internet Explorer a lot, so we had to fix the modal window, which was breaking in some of those browsers, has been fixed. There's a message scroll issue as well, and there was an issue hiding the threads button from the contextual bar, even when threads were disabled. And that's going to be fixed by a community member, Cesar Mall. I was saying this right, but this is just a username, so it's hard to figure out those things. We also, I think there's a fix. So there's a new feature about the custom emoji table scroll. Okay, it's now yeah, there is a table scroll. I think was broken at some points. Direct names not visible in the admin panel. The names of people on direct messages when admins are managing the list of rooms on the admin panel. And there was some bugs that were found on the cache collection. There was actually calling the sync method too many times, and the logic was fixed. So those methods now are being called in a more yeah, clever way, not doing it unnecessarily multiple times. So I think those are the main things on this release. Some of them they look or sound small, but the whole refactoring of the federation was a big thing, and this whole move into React is also a big thing. So just to get those pieces out, it might look like, oh, it just removed a small component, but there was this whole work of creating our React framework, all the components, all the grounds for us to build a whole new admin system and so on, and a way to integrate that back into all these apps and those sharing of the SDKs between the apps. This was a lot of work, and the idea is this will pave the ground for a lot of other things that we're building using React, because we now having really having a good library of components to use. So the UI as a whole is going to look a lot more aligned or a lot more in sync, like for following consistent. That was the word I was looking for. Will look a lot more consistent. So that's we're really happy with this.
Okay, let's start with the questions.
Cool.
We have many questions from Lorik. So, Lorik, thanks for your participation. And let's start. As this project is now a few years old, what is the worst decision that you have made?
Yeah, this is kind of like a tough one when I was thinking about it, because some decisions sometimes you regret, but you know that you didn't have all that information at that point. So you realize that given the information you had at the time, you would still make the same decision, or sometimes you have to hedge your bets. But one of them that I would really like to have kept closer, it was our belief on JavaScript, and using JavaScript for all the chat clients. So we actually gave a good try, invested a lot of resources and time and developers into building the native apps with Kotlin and Swift, and we now realize, and we have the experimental apps. If you guys have not tested it, please do, because soon those are going to replace those official apps, and those apps are all built in React Native. Obviously, at that time, React Native wasn't also on the same level of maturity as the project is now when you have those apps. But I think we could have pulled the plug into those projects earlier on and redirected all the resources into JavaScript. So I think there's a cool T-shirt from Brandon Ike about JavaScript. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the text, but it's always like they said that JavaScript
like
couldn't
it's always
scale.
bad.
It ends on always bet on JavaScript.
Yeah.
Because they say, like, first they said JavaScript didn't scale, then they said JavaScript didn't, and they have all the things they said about JavaScript, and in the end they're all fixed, and they all I think I watched a talk from Brandon Knight once, which was a funny talk, but the gist was, first he was apologizing for building JavaScript. In a way, so like he was explaining, I only had, I think it was 14 days. Like they gave him, like, you have 14 days to come up with a very simple language for us to embed on the browser so you can fight against Microsoft Internet Explorer. So they had 14 days to build the language, and then he always said, like, I had only 14 days. That way, why it was so bad. But I think the nice thing about it, I think, is it kind of gave the JavaScript this um, being humble and always looking at itself as an incomplete language. So they are always striving to improve stuff and change on the next release, and not thinking. And then you see, I think it's almost different from so many other languages where maybe PHP is an language that also has evolved quite a bit during time. I remember like when we were developing PHP 2 or 3, and how is a
That
quite
was long ago.
that's uh, but JavaScript as well. Like every year, they incorporating like so many new concepts and new way of developing, and promises, and which then it really shows how JavaScript is humble and tries to keep evolving. So I think I really like this idea, and I think is a way for the language to keep always fresh, and I think that shows. um that shows that betting on JavaScript and helping the community itself to evolve would have been a better bet than trying to just drop it in favor of other languages for the other apps.
Awesome. And what is the next feature that you're most excited about in both in mobile and web?
I think it's not as actually a feature, but I'm really excited about the code sharing between our apps, having having the SDK share between the mobile clients, the live chat clients, and the web client. Um I think I think that's really powerful. It's going to make all the features more in sync across the clients, and also about these chained events that we are bringing from the concepts from Matrix, because this will solve a lot of problems we have on you never know if you missed message in between messages, like specifically on the mobile. You might, and people have experienced it before, where they say, oh, I sent a message um, on the web client and didn't show up on the mobile client, and maybe because the mobile client was off the network, and then he came back, or lost the connection while he was retrieving messages, and then he got a timestamp, or didn't store probably the timestamp when the last message was probably retrieved. I know there's a lot of guesswork, and sometimes the logic might be wrong on trying to make sure that you haven't missed any messaging between the messages. And when having each message store the ID of the previous message on the chain, you can always just follow the chain and know if anything was missed, and then request that message that is missing specifically by its ID. So it's a lot more efficient. It's a lot more less prone to errors. Um, and I think this whole chain of events to define the state, even this the status, so the state of the room object, and all the messages, and all the members of a channel, will make all the apps more efficient, use less network, be more reliable. So that's what I'm really excited to see on the new apps very soon.
Okay. And what are the features that you like in other apps like Slack or Mattermost that you miss in Rocket.Chat?
So I think from specifically from Slack, something that we've been working even on the Google, during the Google Summer of Code, and now we have to uh, put more effort and finish and merge it, and it's the rich messages, like to have all the full range of message that you have on Slack, like having the buttons, the inputs, all this stuff. I think we really need to finish that implementation to support all the message objects that apps can do with Slack. And I think we have even more ideas, other stuff that we're adding, but we should be at least have all the same message types and components that you can on Slack.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So still on the questions from Lorek. So why didn't you choose to use Matrix protocol for federation?
We actually choose to use it, and then the only, I think, the path for our implementation, which was a bit is a bit different. I think we read the first code, and we made some deployments of Matrix servers to look at how it works and how we use the database. And since our stack is so different, there was nothing that we could just like port the protocol and start using it. And we also wanted to validate the implementation, our own ideas and concepts on how we thought that this should be done. So what we're doing is like this gradual implementation of the concepts, and with the goal to become a Matrix compatible server. But first, we needed to build in a way that we understand, and we are able to build this into the Rocket.Chat engine. So it's not that we're not choosing the Matrix protocol. It's just our implementation. The way we are doing it is a gradual implementation of the protocol. And there's one thing that I particularly don't like about the Matrix protocol, but I think it's something that it can be adapted. Is the way they have the user IDs. I really don't think we should have broken from using the email as your user IDs for federation. I know that they have their reasons why they think why you should use semicolon and then kind of like swap things around so it's clear that it's not an email, it's a matrix. But I think this works well among techie users, but it makes it difficult to cross the chasm with the rest of the world and other users. I think for us, keeping the email as the main user ID handler would be easier to the protocol to actually spread among the rest of the world, like the non-techies. So I don't know. We're trying to develop a version of Matrix where in our servers the ID will still be username at domain of the chat for people to use it. So we'll see. But all in all, we want to be even to have a way or a port or like one of the services from a Rocket.Chat server is to integrate into the Matrix network anyway.
All right. So again, Lorek, quote unquote, I would love to drop Signal for messaging and voice calls with my friends. Do you think you could manage to have the same features in terms of encryption and privacy as them?
Yes, totally. That is actually the plan, and that's even why we have some now Marcos as a security and privacy expert in the team, looking to all those areas that we have to improve. And the idea is to implement the same Signal encryption protocol to allow you to go that far as encrypting all the data and making the server blind to the communication. And the fact that you beyond that you can maybe running your own server, then you even have like the most you can ask from privacy, right? So you have a server that is blind from the communication, and you can maybe even running your own server. So it's a total control of the communication and the apps. Because I think in even Signal, I don't know, you have to have always when you don't own the server, you are actually having some level of trust on that server, right? Even if it's okay, the because if you have a whole system where you didn't see the source code of the client and you didn't see the source code of the server and you cannot touch them, you're actually trusting that was the deployment. When you have an open source project with that implements all those protocols and then you can run the server yourself, is the only way to be 100% sure that you are you get what you think you're getting.
Yeah, interesting. So again, from Lorek, what are the key disadvantages with the current technology stack you're using?
So I think from the ones that are annoying us the most right now it's there's a lot in Meteor that is built for you to build applications quickly and fast, and having um, a rapid deployment and an MVP. But in our case, when you start to hit some edge cases, then Meteor becomes more of a burden than something that is helping you. So the current advantage of us in using the Meteor platform is there are some stuff that we know for our use case we can do better, and we keep removing them away from Meteor, creating our own like streaming libraries, creating our own protocol for streaming, and then once you start removing all those components away from Meteor, you end up like, oh, why are you using Meteor at the end of the day if all it's doing is building, is a build chain? Um, and then there's stuff that we would like to totally drop, but it's part of how Meteor works, so it makes it harder for us to drop. So the current thing is once we migrate all the UI to React, I think we'll be ready to drop Meteor and turn Rocket.Chat into a vanilla app. So our current limitation from the current stack really, I think, is how Meteor does a lot of stuff under the hood that we don't need anymore, and causes it to uh, always keep a connection to the database, even if we have some better ways of connecting database than the way Meteor do. I don't, so it's a few things on the that it give us less control rather than when we build our own building chain.
Right, right. Yeah. So we see that 2.0 is under development.
Yep.
Is
Wow,
there-
he's actually trying to get out of.
trying to get out.
We are like
Candidate.
it's a release candidate, and we had some memory leak to fix, and as soon that is fixed, it's going to be released.
Right. And so, is there any plan to terminate support for older versions like the 0 dot versions?
Yeah, I think the plan is really just as we release version 2.0, we'll support for another month, and we say that in October we won't be supporting 0 dot releases. We're putting out a release schedule for dropping support of versions. Um, I'm not entirely sure. I think there was discussions about it for a specific time, which versions would be LTS, and so on. So let's put a link on the description when we finish to where that is those definitions were made.
Okay, there are two questions about integrations from Resky. So, any plans on Google G Suite integration, like mail, calendar, contacts, documents?
Yes, and again, we started a long time ago. We did some trying to even put some integrations on the Google Store, and I think it's time to bring them back to the roadmap. I know that Slack now has promoted some deeper integrations with the Google G Suite, and yeah, we want to now getting more people on board to get more work done on using Slack as a benchmark, and then copy those integrations. Mainly, I think it's going to be like contacts and documents, and not. I don't know. Well, the idea is look at Slack as a benchmark and try to come up with something at least to the same level of what Slack does.
Nice. And any plans on Microsoft Graph integration?
So this is slightly new, like and the kind of the question is always yes. From what I look on the graph integration, it has similar kind of data objects in a sense where you're getting Google, you'll be able to get like files and tasks and directory. And so you should we should be able to build once we build the one of G Suite, build in a generic enough way that we could adapt and build one for Microsoft's Graph at the same time to consume the same calendar objects and contacts and documents to show inside Rocket.Chat. I think we'll try to build a initial version as soon as maybe after the release of version 3, before the end of the year, but in a few months from now, like maybe a proof of concept, and then get more of the community engaged in trying to help us do that better. Hopefully, maybe using the apps engine, so the release cycle can be faster than just getting the source code released.
Okay, the next question is from Ethereum. I
Yeah.
think it's like this. When will Federation be taken out of beta, as it is not recommended for production using currently?
So the new release now in version 2, like I said, is a release candidate. That's why I delayed the whole release of 2.0. It's because of some issues that we had with the code that we are still testing. So as soon as those are fixed, then we'll release the federation part as a release candidates. And when we release the version 3.0 is where we probably idea is to have the stable version released, and it'll be baked in. The codes be baked in into the main engine rather than something that runs on top, looks at the stream of messages, and then creates the federation. Once you finish, it's going to be just part as how the whole project works. So let's say version 3.0 is when it's planned to be the final stable version.
Okay. And what do you think about implementing a tip jar for features? For example, pay a developer to implement a specific marketplace app that will be free, open source, but has initial creation funded. This
So-
user mentioned
Bounty service.
Bounty
So
service.
we do have, we already have a few projects in bounty service, and I think even Reich received the bounty for the LDAP integration. So I think that's a start to have maybe to have one project there with the issues for apps, and then people can put the bounties there. But there's also other websites, like there's one in crypto that people pay using tokens. Trying to remember which, I have to remember what was but we are also listed there. So it's a way for them to do donation for people to develop for open source. But I think bounty service could be a good start, and just by having a project there for the specific marketplace apps that people want.
Okay. Another one by Rescue Will. Any plans on PBX integration like Twilio, Asterix, etc.? He says, quote unquote, it would be nice to have my Rocket.Chat hooked up to our Asterisk to receive and make calls, especially in live chat.
And yes, we actually have a version of the mobile clients that was developed by Comlink that will be merging back to our apps and trying to build that, which has a SIP integration. So when you actually register a user, you can provision a SIP number, and then that user, when he logs into Rocket.Chat, the mobile client, they can make phone calls from the mobile client. So we already have a version of that working. Then we'll be merging, and we actually have to refactor it to fit into the React Native apps. So as soon as the React Native apps are out as the official versions, we start building this PBX SIP integration into the apps. And there's some then work to be done on the server, so you can pass the configuration directly to the clients when they log in. Right now, it's a bit of a manual process, but the idea is going to be very streamlined and easy for the end user, like not to have even to deal with it.
Okay. Another one. Any plans on integrating Redis, Memcached / Elasticsearch for ultra-fast trademark full text searching, indexing of messages?
So we have an integration with Solar, and actually the guys at the Deutsche Bahn worked on that, where they created the APIs where you can stream all those messages into Solar, and then defer the search and the text search into Solar to show the results. So I would ask if people have already think, because I think that's what needs improvement. But the implementation itself, like the structure and how it works, and they build it in a way that solar is just one option. You could build into other stuff, and I think Elasticsearch would be was another, because I think they all uh, kind of Elasticsearch and solar sort of come from there's the engine behind is the same. I'm trying to remember like what is the project from.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, my memory is not helping me here, but there's a project behind Elasticsearch and Solar. But so yes, the the implementation is there. I'm not sure if most people know that they can use that for full text searching, and becomes then you can set it up to be global across channels and stuff. So idea is to work on improve that.
Right. So now from the user Kendall Johnson, is there any plan on when the 1,000 push notifications limit will be enforced?
So that's a yeah, a touch subject, because we actually want to enforce when you have plans for people to just be able to buy bundles of more push notifications from our servers, even not necessarily lock them into having to upgrade to enterprise. So you want to have like a few options, and I think the idea is to work on this in the next month or two. Now that we are able to buy apps and that are serve cloud and enabled, for instance, like we're calling them what is the name?
Cloud services.
Cloud, yeah, buying cloud services and apps for the specific server. Now that that is out, and once we get a version of that working, you'll be able to buy more push notification as extra cloud services. Again, there is always a way for you to bundle, compile your own apps, put your own certificates, and then point to your own push gateway. But we will only enforce the push notification barrier in the next couple of months when we have a cloud services app that has the push notification.
Okay. And the user Ethereum, he says, it has been a long time since audio calls via WebRTC has been mentioned or focused in previous releases. What are the plans for audio calls on Rocket.Chat?
So what we're doing right now, and that's the literally the last component of the new mobile apps that the guys are working right now. It's the Jitsi SDK integration into the React Native apps. That's the only reason we have not replaced the current mobile apps, is because we found some incompatibilities between the Jitsi SDK and the Realm database they're using. So on the end of the day, after trying to fix those issues and even asking the help with the Jitsi team and the Realm team, we end up having to switch the database on the mobile apps from Realm to
Watermelon.
Watermelon DB. Yeah. So we've now have a version working with Watermelon DB, and then we start merging the Jitsi work back into the React Native. If all goes to plan before the end of the month, then we have the mobile apps with the baked-in Jitsi app, all in a single app, and then is the idea is to really work again on the UX of the web clients and having them all working perfectly together. So that's the short-term work that is being done. On the longer term, we already have some projects with the guys from Big Blue Button as one option. If people don't want to deploy GC, they can deploy Big Blue Button. I know that Big Blue Button itself can run on Currento, which is the app from Twilio, our project that Twilio bought for doing the streaming. So I think once we finish at least the Jitsi as the starting point, we'll start to abstract those entry points and try to create different adapters for different backend technologies to be used with Rocket.Chat. So that's the beyond SIP, obviously, using for using video and audio conference, we'll be using the Jitsi and having all those part of the UI in React Native. The good thing on the whole React Native stuff, it's that Jitsi Meet itself is built on React Native. So in theory, it should be an even easier or better integration and a way for our team to embed the components of the Jitsi into Rocket.Chat.
All right. I think we have another one here. It's like
Two extra questions.
two extra ones.
Okay.
Right. So this one is from CISOS Master. Will there be a way to ask the iframe for whether a user is logged in, or only do a login when there is no user session?
That was, I don't think, why not? Why? Yeah, that should be a easy enough implementation. Is there an issue related to that? Because maybe if there's create an issue with the specification, it could be easy for us to add into the roadmap. But when there's no users, I don't know. It seems like a reasonable. If I'm understanding the question correctly, it seems like an easy, interesting and easy add-on for the implementation.
Yeah, I think for that we would need like this kind of a post message exchanging between the parent window and the iframe hosting Rocket.Chat.
Yeah.
But yeah, it shouldn't be.
And are you talking this for live chat or for the main?
Oh, that's a good question.
The main window or both? I don't know. And could.
Yeah, I think like for both, implementation should be similar, if not the same. But...
Fair enough. So please, always as usual, open an issue about this, and then we usually have the issue triage. So on every week we have the lead team read all the new issues and decide if they should be planned, and or if you want the community to add as a pull request. So please open your issue and give as much detail as you can, please.
Okay. This one, is it a question? The
way email started with the name at domain is already
through
with issues, but has the best.
I think it's not a question.
Pre-DNS. I'm not sure if that was.
Like, doesn't look like a question, but
who added this on our?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't know. I agree with the statement that email started with name at domain, and was the best at the time, like pre-DNS. But is it maybe someone trying to say maybe there was more comments?
It's a comment about the matrix discussion previously, like
and
why we didn't use the matrix.
The ID
protocol for
we have our support. It was part of this.
Okay.
Okay.
Better.
So it was a part of that question. I think I still think that because people have their emails on the business card, people still have their and they tend to change less their email than they change their phone numbers. So I think having a global directory of phone numbers might be really hard and complex in so many different levels. And I think there are some global directories where you can have your like Facebook ID and you make your LinkedIn ID and Google ID and so on, and where people can find each other and then get their final route and ID. But I think trying to simplify things, keeping to the email at this point, um, and getting the servers to use the DNS to find the other server and then email the user in that domain, it still works pretty well. And I think it would make it easy for people to not having to reprint business card with a new ID on it. If you just find each other, and then you also even have an easy way to send an invite. If that person still doesn't have an account, you can send an invite, or you can even do a fallback of the message by email, and the person reply to the email. You insert it back on the message stream, so that person can use email to participate on the conversation if they don't want to install a new client. So I don't know. My opinion is that we should evolve from email, get the best of it, and keep it rather than ditch email completely and trying to reinvent the wheel that in the parts that work good. So that's why we're trying to keep the name at domain structure.
Okay, all right, everybody. This is the end of this month's AMA. We are having these webinars every month, so you can send your questions in our channel on open.rocket.chat. Ask me anything.
Right, and thank you all for being here with us today. Watch the recording of this AMA like shortly after we finish here, and past AMAs and webinars are there on our YouTube channel. And stay tuned for news on our social accounts on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and so on. I guess that's it.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Guys.
And I think we're getting better on starting on time.
Yeah.
Let's try next time. We'll be able to start on time, and give us some feedback also on the quality of the audio and video, because we've been trying. We've got some we have some nice microphone and trying to get the Apple camera to work and stuff. So, but we are not pros, far from it in doing so. But we would love to get you the best experience possible. I'm even thinking, I don't know if there's any way for us to record maybe the image or the video on our side in better resolution and then upload in full resolution after. I don't know. We have to.
Yeah, I don't know either.
That's so. If you guys know a thing or two about webinars and want to give us some feedback on how to do it better, please, help. Cool.
Okay. See you next month.
See you next month. Bye.